Hi. Wow. I've put this particular subject off for as long as I possibly can. It's numbers, or statistics. And I don't like numbers and I don't like categorizing things that tight into like little sort of boxes. That's what I think mathematics does. However, in this case, because I want to try and give an overview of what it is to be disabled and what you run into in your life. I have to give these numbers because they sort of validate what I'm going to say. Plus, they're going to link up the subjects that are coming up in a couple of other videos, and they also refer back to some of the other ones, especially into ableism and disableism, and a little bit into the transit. I put up two charts. They're bar charts to look at to see what kind of numbers there was all across Canada totally for employment. So how many people overall does Canada have? How many of those people are considered or who identify as being disabled? How many are employed and how many are unemployed? And one of the interesting things to have found out there was that there are disabled people who are unemployed but would be considered employable. So in that they do not have a severe disability that would stop them, prevent them from doing a job, and yet they are unemployed. So to give you an idea of what the numbers are, Canada overall, and yes, I'm reading because it's numbers. Okay. The total population of Canada at this point is estimated at 38,930,000. Of that, 20,160,000 are employed, and 1,090,000 are unemployed. Excuse me. So of the total population of Canada, 2.8% are unemployed. Okay? Now, for disabled people, this is going to be taken down a little bit. All right? The total disabled population in Canada is 6,200,000, give or take. All right? The total number of employed people with disabilities is 2,200,000. And the disabled unemployed, which we've talked about a little bit, is 850,000. So for disabled unemployed, they are 13.8% of the total disabled population, and they are 2.2 of the total population of Canada. Okay. So if you think about that for a little bit, if the total unemployed for Canada are 2.8% of the total population, and the total unemployed for disabled people is 2.2, it's a pretty decent number. Now, the total disabled unemployed is 78% of the total Canadian unemployed. That's a lot. And yet, the total employed persons with disability is only 11% of the total Canadian employed people. How is that possible? How can we be well over 50%? We're 3/4 of the way there, of being almost all of the unemployed people in Canada. That's amazing, truly. Okay, we also need to talk a little bit about salaries. Okay, so again, I'm reading. All right. So according to Statistics Canada, the 2019 Canadian Income Survey looked at the pay gap between persons with and without disabilities. So the average in 2019 earnings of Canadians 16 years of age and over was $43,400. Okay, for persons without disabilities, it was $55,200. So that's roughly a gap of 21.4% between the two groups. Now, if you break that down, and of course they did, they break it down many different ways and stuff. So by sex, for example, all right. So men experienced a 24.3% difference, and the men's wages were higher, which is pretty typical. It's not right, but it's pretty typical, right? And the women were at 13.7%. Still a very big gap when you consider that they're like for like. So jobs of the same type, of the same value, are being paid lower to people with disabilities. Okay. Now this next breakdown is one that I find particularly infuriating because, as I said, I don't like putting people in boxes, and I don't like seeing the type of discrimination that this particular breakdown shows. So they broke the data down by type of disability, so nothing specific. They put it into broad groups. Okay, and then they compared it to non-disabled people and the pay gaps as follows. So for people with cognitive disabilities, they earned 46% less. With mental health disabilities, 31% less. With physical disabilities, so like somebody like me with mobility issues, for example, was 20.7, and both hearing disabilities and vision disabilities were 12.3%. So if you ever wondered if there was a discrepancy in what in competition for the best jobs, there is. People with disabilities tend to be seen as less able, which is not what disability is. It's what the word technically means, because this is not an able is able. But we're not. And that's why accommodations are supposed to be made, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about. I'm sorry, I have to rant a little bit here. These statistics come from the very people who wrote the Act for Canadians with Disabilities and the AODA, the Ontario Act, and who are working in Alberta and British Columbia and everywhere else in order to make it, and the Ontario human rights people and the Canadian human rights people and so on, and they all come up with, they allow this to happen. They allow this kind of thing to go on, where people are looked at for not who they are, what they can bring to a job, a workplace, an environment that may actually benefit from having them there. They're not looked at in that way. They're looked at as something that has to be tolerated, that they've been mandated to have to deal with. And that's a horrible thing to do to a human being. And that's why numbers are so dry, because they don't, you don't see people. You see just numbers and dollar signs, and that's it, and percentages, and it's all neat, and you can keep them all lined up and everything, and people are messy, and by God, they should be, and they need to be respected. Another aspect of employment, if you are disabled, is what happens once you get the job. There are some places where it can be a very friendly atmosphere, and employers go the extra mile to make accommodations, and employees are encouraged to make everyone feel welcome and to be a part of the team. And please don't get me wrong on this. Okay, if you are employed somewhere and there are job expectations, there's a job description, and this is what you are supposed to do, it's everyone's duty to fulfill those expectations. The only thing that a person with disabilities may require is an accommodation in order to help them achieve that, because there is something that would make it easier for them to do that. So, for example, and I'll use myself and my former life. I had a job where I needed an accommodation to have my walker near or at my workstation, and I also needed to be able to take regular breaks, short ones, but just regular breaks, in order to let the muscles and everything kind of relax a little bit, because having severe arthritis, a couple of different kinds, and I also have epilepsy, makes it necessary that I take these kinds of breaks, because my spine, I have ankylosing, good lord, spondylitis in 2 areas in my back, and so it makes me want to bend all the time. When I start to get tired, when I've lifted too much, or I start to get tired, I just want to bend forward, and it actually feels so good when I do, but it looks a little weird. And I have my knees lock and get very, very stiff, and my legs do, and I lose feeling in my lower legs and in my hands, and I can't grip anymore. And so it becomes a problem. And so this was something that I had to negotiate with my employer over the course of my time there, because my disability, without those things, but it was getting worse and it needed to be done. So we didn't have those at first, and we had to bring them in as things changed with me medically. Okay. The walker was a very difficult thing to get into place. And it caused some discord between my employer and myself. And there were things like my walker was being moved from wherever because they needed the space to get to someplace, and they wouldn't take the brakes off of it, so they just push it and get it out of the way. And this is my method of being safe when I move, and I'd watch this and go like, okay, so there go my brakes, right? I use them to go down hills and to get me off of curbs and different odd things. So, okay. And then having it out in the workplace was another point of contention. But for my breaks, lunch, that kind of thing, I needed to have a designated spot that would get me off of the floor with the walker. And because I could not go upstairs to the break room, it was decided that I would have a spot that was designated for me. And so the spot that was chosen was at the back doors. So when you come in off the floor, at the back doors, and the steps to go up to the break room and the offices was right across from where I was to sit. And then there was a hallway passageway all the way through there. They painted a yellow square on the floor where my walker was to go and where I was to sit in the back. There was a sign put up that said, please do not put any carts, garbage, whatever in this spot. And I felt very, very exposed there. And even when I spoke about it to my employer, I was told that it might seem that I was being centered out and made a spectacle of and all that kind of thing, but that was not the intent, that this was the only place to put me. And I spoke to my union reps. I had 3 different ones during this time. And I spoke to them, and they all agreed, yes, of course, you're being centered out, you're being made to look the way you feel like you're being made to look. But it's probably better than having nothing. So, we're going to have to deal with it. Okay. That didn't make me feel any better because honestly, I felt worthless. I really did. More than anything else that happened there, that having that spot, having to have people walk by and go, hi, I guess you're really comfy there. Well, are you getting along okay there, Leona? And having people who were in the workspace out there come through the doors and ask me questions about what was going on out there, and and why was I just sitting when they needed help and one of the things. Um, and anybody, like, if people did stop to talk to me, they were working and they should have carried on, but it got them into a little bit of trouble that way as well, and it wasn't a good feeling at all. I was also by an exit door, but there was no plan. They tried to make one sort of with the union reps for what would happen if the building had to be evacuated, what would happen. Though there were stairs right out the door that I would have had to go down, and then I would have had to have walked, because the designated meeting place was out at the road, basically, at the parking lot entrance. And nobody knew how I was going to do it, because how do you get a walker out, down the stairs, me down the stairs, and that it's a long walk, but it's okay, because I said, right, if the building's burning down, or you know, there's some reason why you have to leave, I'm going to go. Like, worst comes to worst, I'm gonna throw the walker down the stairs, be hanged what happens to it. It's gonna, you know, it's gonna go, and I'm gonna go down the stairs, and if I have to drag me, I'll drag me. And that's as much as was thought about it. That's why it felt horrible. Is because I had to be happy to not be thought of. And that's what it's like. Because there aren't enough inroads yet. And if you're working and you want that job, you need to shut up and get going. If you are not employed, and especially if you cannot work because of your disability, you then have the possibility of the option of going on a disability pension. Here in Ontario, you have ODSP, which is the provincial disability pension, and there's also a Canadian disability pension. The standing joke whenever I talk to anybody about the Canadian disability pension is that nobody ever gets it the first time they apply. Some people that I have talked to have applied 3 and 4 times for it. And it's also another one of those pensions where, so if you get X amount from the Canada pension, ODSP says, okay, you're getting that much, we're going to take off that much. So here we go, going down. Okay. And if you're collecting any other sort of pension work thing, whatever happened, okay, and stuff, it goes down. In my case for ODSP, because of my living situation, it was lower because there, first of all, I was collecting my Canada pension, which was a reduced rate, so, but okay, I was collecting it, so it went down. I don't get a Canada disability pension, I collect my Canada pension. And so it was reduced there, and because of the way I live with a family member and I contribute by way of paying bills and buying groceries and varying things like that, but I don't get receipts for it because this is my family. And if I got receipts for it, yes, my disability pension would go up. I need to have receipts for rent or my name on a bill or something like in order to do that, because I have to prove that this is the case. But if I do that, then that is income for my family member, and their pension goes down. So you're not gaining anything anywhere. So leave it the way that it is. I filled out all of the paperwork to apply for my pension, and that involved going to the doctor and getting them to look at me and to say what I have, and to show proof of it, and what the expectations were for my ability over the course of time, and so on. All right, I did that. I did not apply for the Canada Disability Pension, although I could have, but if you go backwards, there is apparently some possibility that you would need to pay back part of your Canada pension that you had already collected. And why am I going to try and do that? Because I don't have the money to do that in the first place. So I did not do that, but that's also one of the things that they throw in there. And I found out that on your income tax, there is the disability tax credit. But you again have to submit and prove your disability and what it is, and that you have to go to the doctor and have them fill out forms and send them in. And there's a component that you fill out as well. The doctor can charge you a fee for this information, and in it has to go before they will consider it. And when I found out about it, I did it, and they still needed more information, and so we're kind of up in the air about what's going on there. I'm gonna break it a coffee fit in a minute. So all of this is, they talk about giving you a living wage, and then they do absolutely the opposite in everything that they've already established, so that they don't have to give you money. So aren't they looking for the answer to something they already have the answer to, if they just like say, let's just give them what we already, hey, because you like, they deduct my Canada pension from my disability pension because I can't apparently have two benefits at one time. Well, that would be extra money that they wouldn't have to give me from over here someplace where they haven't decided how they're going to do it. I don't understand. But that's the way disability works. That's the way you go about trying to navigate and get what you need when you need it. Financial independence is something that everybody from the time you start working tries to achieve. From the time that you're a teenager and you make your first $100 paycheck, and you're on top of the world, because it's like, that's amazing. Is that what you're going for? You set goals. You say, I'm gonna buy a car, and that may not be your first goal. If you're a 16-year-old, yes it is, because you're going to go get your driver's license and that's what you want to do. It could be a stereo, it could be a boat, it could be traveling, it could be any one of a guitar, all that kind of stuff. But being able to say, I can go do this. Now that's financial independence. Being able to get the dress for the date, or the new shoes, or the toy that your child really, really, really wants for Christmas, or doing something crazy like learning how to hang glide, like that's the dream, right? And for someone with disabilities, that dream is very, very difficult to attain with the statistics and the numbers the way that they are.